And we're live, and we're live, and we're live, and we're live, and we back
For another conversation.
for another conversation. My goodness, I'm trying to get us up and running on, here we go, up and running on Instagram, and it looks like we are up and running. Let's go, y'all.
Let's go.
My goodness, I think so. Hold on, I thought so for 2 seconds. Should be good on Instagram. All right, y'all.
LinkedIn, YouTube, we're on it all.
LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, we are on it all. Yes, yes, we are. Yep. And I'm seeing us live in all the places. Y'all, I'm so excited for this conversation today. If you all had an opportunity to join us yesterday with Joan, we had a conversation healing centered ecosystem for individuals, especially women of color, ready to reclaim their voice. We guide you from writing your message to building your movements. And unlike programs that are not built for your liberation, we offer a communal, decolonized journey that honors your whole self through every stage of publishing your brilliance. And we are going to dive in even deeper about what that looks like today with Catherine. So I am so honored to have you here with us today. I'm so glad that you showed up, Catherine. I am so glad for the folks who are watching who showed up because we have something special that's happening. If you all have been following me for this past week, I have had one of the most beautiful weeks, week and a half, almost 2 weeks. Um, that's just been back to back beauty. Last week, I had the opportunity to be in New York for my graduation from the Goldman Sachs 1 Million Black Women Black in Business program. And just to, man, if you've gone through that program, it's been 9 cohorts. They're about to do their 10th. If you've gone through that program, you understand the amount of rigor
Yes.
and time and energy that's been put into that space to get clarity about our businesses. And that's when I really realized how unique and how different we really are, right? And so I had that week and then went into my birthday week. My birthday was on Monday. I got to celebrate it on Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. My friend just had a birthday party yesterday. That was a jam session. So all the Leos are getting together and just having fun. And I just feel so blessed to be in this space, to be curating a dream that I had a long time ago. And Catherine, you have been a part of that journey. So thank you so much for being here. I would
You're
love for
welcome.
you to introduce yourself to the group. But before you do that, um, I was going somewhere with that other thing because I just got lost in the beauty that has been this past week and a half, right? But part of the celebration of my birthday has been to invite women of color to join us on our journey of healing and writing in our morning and evening writing pages space, right? And it's
Yes.
a community of women of color who allow you to just show up as you are in the space so that you can really heal and unlearn the things that has not served you so that you can show up on the page as your best self. And I'm opening the door for a legacy rate at $97 a month, and that is locked in for life. Right, as long as you are a part of the program and you stay
Yep.
signed up, $97 a month, y'all, is nothing for the transformation that you receive in this space. And so we'll talk a little bit more about the details, but I wanted to be able to create a space where you all get to experience a snippet of what we offer here, right? Catherine has been a part of this space from the very, very beginning. And so to have your perspective on this journey with us is just so great. So yes, please take a moment, introduce yourself. You know what
I
we do
will.
in this community. We say our name, pronouns if you choose. Answer the question, where are your feet planted? Shout out to Joan for that language. And then
Yep.
you get to answer the question, what keeps you coming back to Bird's World?
Well, so aloha kako, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're watching from. And so, first, another very happy birthday to Heather, and that I am so incredibly proud of your graduation, of what you have achieved through Goldman Sachs, and that you are a catalyst, you are a cultivator, and you're doing it all with great courage, and to be able to continue to grow this space is both an honor and a privilege. So I sort of first want to start with that. I also want to shout out to those that are watching that if you watch, what Heather did around her birthday was not make it about her, right? But so often, like, we think about birthdays, we think about celebrations, we think about it through an individualistic lens. What Heather did was she thought about it through a collective movement building lens. So by setting up this legacy evening, morning pages, not just read, but being able to come into the community in this way, is that she is celebrating by doing it through a form of community and with great courage. Because again, there's so many other ways that she could have celebrated her birthday, but for Heather to name it, and she named it very early on that she wanted to do this. So this is not something that she's thought about the day before her birthday. This has been in the works for weeks. And so I just want to sort of say that before I sort of jump in about who I am, because so much of who I am is defined by this community. And so my name is Catherine Wong. I define myself as a great granddaughter, as a granddaughter, as a godmother. I define myself as a lifelong educator of 40 plus years. I define myself as someone who believes in young people, believes in their dreams, and believes in centering them in our education system. I have taught anywhere from K-12 through higher education with the intent that we are building community as we go so that we are continuing to give back to the generation that is coming up behind us, but we're also continuing to nurture ourselves as early, mid, elder careers, and that we also are then continuing to honor our elders. And for someone who is now in an elder space and is being defined as an elder, and something that I myself have embraced more than I was even like 3 years ago, that my feet are planted right now in New England, but my life, my soul, my heart, and everything about who I am is from the island of Hawaii. And so I often define myself in that duality because I can and I will. And I think so often our identities are singularized. And what's so precious about this space is that we do not ever demand that of any woman of color that comes into this space, that our intersectionality matters, who we are matters, and how we get to say who we are unapologetically is valued at the highest form. So what keeps me coming back into this space? So first, right, I have been, and it's been an honor to have been with Heather since the beginning, and that the creation of morning pages was incredibly fluid and organic. So I don't know, and y'all can raise your hands and look at the screen and smile at yourself. But how many of you, when you've been in a space and someone has asked you to do something, so it could have been a chore as a kid, it could be in this space where Heather was giving several of us our writing assignments, right? Like I came into this space because for years, and shout out to all of the students that I have had, because I am who I am because of them. And so many of them said, Catherine, you need to write a book. I often would weave my family stories into my teaching. I believe in being vulnerable in front of students. That again, I'm not a top-down hierarchical educator and never have been. And so I, again, sort of said, okay, I'm going to do this and promise people, but never started. I had stuff written, everything's written in my head, right? And I committed to memory, but has never gone from head to paper. And so 6 years ago, I had a career transition and I sort of said, you know what, if not now, when? And I had met Heather at a conference, probably several times we feel, but we met sort of more virtually. And when someone, and sense when someone says you matter, is that she was on this big webinar, there's 100 something people on it, and yet there was a chat box open. And I thought, you know what, she's not going to see this, but I'm really moved by what she's saying, so I'm just going to comment. And if somebody sees it, great. And all of a sudden, a message pops back. And when the keynote speaker is speaking and pops you back a message, you're like, oh my goodness. And so I read it, and she was like, Catherine, you have a story in you, we should connect. And I was like, well, all right then. So I reached out to her, and we started to work as coach and coachee, right? And to be able to isolate stories that were going to become part of my memoir, and we can talk about that process in a bit. But going back to the yesing is that she had given me a number of assignments to get me jump started in my writing. Lo and behold, she was also doing that to several other women of color.
Mm-hmm.
And one of them was to actually do morning pages. We had set it all up where I was going to wake up, stay in my pajamas, go to my office, grab a glass of water, maybe even a cup of tea, and write 30 minutes uninhibited. Promised that I was going to do it. Did it once. Felt good, but you know how you get up in the morning and this was the middle of pandemic and you just jump into your work life.
Mm-hmm.
So Heather did so Catherine, have you been doing morning pages? And I was like, yeah. And when you yes somebody because you've done it, so I wasn't lying technically, but I was not doing it daily. But she never asked that question. She just said, are you doing morning pages? So I said, yes. Well, no, lo and behold, so did everyone else. So Regina did that. Teresa did that. We all basically were doing the yesing. We've called it now the yesing Heather. Well, she caught on because it doesn't. She is an educator by trade. She refuses and tells me she's not because she's never been in a classroom. But that's BS. I'm going to try not to swear. So, being the educator that she is, she was just like, "Yeah, these people are playing me." So she's like, "You know what, y'all? I am not a morning person, but I'm going to get you all in a Zoom room at 7:30 East Coast time, 6:30 Central time, and y'all going to do morning pages together." And we're all like, "Aw, yeah." And she's like, because I am not a morning person, you all are going to do this. So we all were like, all right, you know what? She's right. Like she called us out because in fact, like it is true. So she said, we're going to do this for 2 months because I want you to get into this habit. You all have a story in you. You have verbalized it. I know it's there. So with our great trust of Heather, we started morning pages. That was 4 years ago. And after 60 days, 30 days, another 30 days, we were just like, it never occurred to us to stop.
Mm-mm.
So, what was supposed to be basically a 2 month trial pilot has now, and then it expanded because we know, right? Not every person has 30 minutes in the morning in terms of what time you have to be at work, when you have to get the kids
Mm-hmm.
up, getting families set up in terms of their day. So
Your
we
workout.
actually, over 2 years ago, we were able to expand to evening pages twice a week. So this level of growth, and again, the fact that it has been sort of organically done because it was what the community needed, not because
Mm.
Heather said, like, oh, let's do this. What this has come about is this is what we want and this is what we need. So there you go.
My goodness. I'm just now realizing it's 2 years ago that we expanded into evening
Mm,
pages because it coincided with the
correct.
release of Igniting Ink. And if y'all
Correct.
don't have your copy of Igniting Ink, you definitely need to get one because it's a 30-day writing journey that you could easily do in the morning and evening writing spaces with us, right? But one of the things that we don't always consider is how much mindset plays a part of the writing journey. We think we're
Absolutely.
just going to get up, do the work. Like Catherine was saying, I'm just going to get up and I'm going to write and it's going to be fine, right? But then our mind tells us all the other things that we need to be doing. Why we're not worthy of the page. Why, um, whether or not what I have to say anyone's actually going to read, or if it's any good, or if I'm putting a comma in specific places, right? And I just want to say, shout out to Lady D. I see you, my dear. You were in these comments. You were not playing. Also, shout out to J.R. Mackey, who was here earlier on Facebook. I see y'all. Look here. If y'all are here, let us know in the chat. We want to know
Yes,
where you're
please.
coming from, and that what we're saying is resonating with you, right? But one of the reasons why I wanted to pull together Igniting Ink is because I wanted to have something that focused on the mindset part of the writing journey. Because we have a tendency to get be hard on ourselves because we can't just jump into the writing journey, right? I tell folks this all the time. It takes me 3 pages of writing to get to what I actually should be writing about. And if I'm talking it out, it takes me 10 minutes. And so in this journal, we focus on what Catherine is talking about, cultivating the healthy writing habits, setting up your spaces. We talk about overcoming the doubt and fear and being able to write through that. We talk about being able to uncover the stories that you've been sitting with and embracing your unique voice, right? All of those things are a part of the journey. And so you just reminded me, I, to the fact that we're coming up on 4 years for morning pages, and it's
Pages.
been
Yep.
2 years for evening pages. That level of consistency and the way in which people have been showing up for themselves, there is no doubt that you're going to see a shift in who you are as a person as well.
And I met
So,
you in 2020. So the formation of this started 6+ years ago.
yeah,
Um,
like
in terms of
noticing,
this Bird's World community. So
ooh, and seeing it in real time, like just it gives me chills. Like I literally have chills and goosebumps because I don't always recognize what 4 years, almost 4 years of showing up has done.
mhm,
Because we it's become part of our routine now. It's in our blood. So when we wake up and we show up in the space, it's just our regular routine. When we have to be away for whatever reason that may come up, whether it is job, whether it is health, whether it is I am just exhausted and just need a break, and then we come back, we realize how invigorating this space actually is for us. And then the way folks show up on the page is absolutely beautiful. So thank you so much for sharing the beginnings that you were there for. Um, and every time Catherine speaks, I immediately want to pick up a pen, but my hand doesn't write fast enough because I call you my sage and my breeze, right? The way in which you are able to just
thank you.
settle my entire spirit, and allow me to dig deep within my mind to find the right words to explain what we do, and just see myself as well. You are also someone who has extended a level of grace that I am learning, right? Like we are so patient with each other in this group because we don't expect you to come in. I don't know for anyone else, if you've ever been a part of a group and you walked in the door and you were a newbie and you were nervous about being in the space, and then people made you feel bad about knowing something, which then makes you want to run right back out the door and never return. So then that means whatever you were there for, whether it's your story or something else, is now you're now backed up. It's now stuck
Yep.
in you because you didn't feel comfortable in a space. And the amount of times that Catherine has so lovingly, she talks about my patients, and she talks about like my approach in working with others. Catherine's approach is here's a seed. It's going to drop that seed very, very gently, and maybe one day you'll pick it up. No, you haven't picked it up yet. I'm gonna drop this seed, right? So the amount of times that you have been like, Heather, you should do this. And I'm like, uh-huh. But then my mind is swirling and I haven't picked it up
Including
yet, right?
igniting ink. Including
Right? With it,
igniting ink.
igniting ink is a prime example of that. Extending to evening pages is a prime example of that. The works
Yep.
that's coming out in March of 2027, all about our liberation. The amount of times you planted that seed because you saw that there was a need for us, and the level of patience that you're like, I'm just going to drop this here. And maybe you'll pick it up today. No, not today. A week from now, I'm going to drop it again. No, not yet. 2 months from now. Here's another, right? And so, how often are you in spaces where others have the level of patience that you give other people but hasn't been granted for you? The same thing goes for our work. As we're working through finding our voice in this space, as we're working through showing up on the page, as we're working through letting our guard down because we've had to put our guard up to protect ourselves, we give each other grace so that we can work through that process. And so, my goodness, when I think about women of color that are watching this, that are not a part of the group, that haven't experienced this level of liberation in their bones, in their spirit, in their writing, what would you say to them for folks who are sitting at home wondering if this is a space for her?
I would say sitting at home, sitting in your office is to first, think about how many times a day, right, that you go into spaces where you're the only woman, you're the only woman of color, you're the only senior executive, right? Like more of our experiences are as only than as community. And what is so precious about this space is that we create our own definitions. So, right? So, how we define time is actually undefined. So we say that morning pages starts at 6:30 Central Time, 7:30 East Coast time, or wherever you are in the world, right? And
Mhm.
it's 30 minutes, usually 3 pages of continuous writing. Well, it morphed then into community conversations because we didn't want to get off. And so at 8 o'clock, we turn off the music, and the other piece is that we ground ourselves in wellness first. So, how many of you think about how many times a day you catch yourself holding your breath? And I know that I did and still do, but I'm better at catching myself and then taking a deep breath. And so when
Mhm.
we start morning and evening pages, we actually start with humming and with breathing. And there is a way that being able to pay attention to your physical body and blending your mind, body, and spirit to start your day with
Mhm.
these women online. And again, right, the whole idea about, oh, you can't create community online, it's just, faces on a screen. Well, that's another piece of BS, right? Because we have created that. We're going on 6 years of having created that, small and then moving into morning and evening pages. But what's very powerful is that come 8 o'clock, once the music is off, we start spontaneous conversation. And it can last 20 minutes, it can last 30 minutes. But we've actually joked around, including this week, we had a new member join us and we went past East Coast time, we went through 9:15. And Heather was texting me later in the day and she's like, how did it go? And I go, well, we went past the 9 a.m. hour and we have
And
had
that
folks
was an
as
evolution.
PT. No, right.
Just real
And
quick, like when we first started, it
yep.
was we logged on 30 minutes of writing and then we went on with our days, right?
Uh-huh.
And then came
Hmm.
back the next day, wrote for 30 minutes, and then my time, 7 o'clock Central hit, and we were off. The level of natural evolution of this space based on the needs of the people in the room is a
Exactly.
direct tribute to the fact that we have these community conversations because we needed it. I just had to say that because it didn't start off.
No, no, it didn't start off that way. And what I think is so precious about this space is that it is an evolution. And it is an evolution that is not defined by the ways that we have been conditioned to be in the world. And so, for example, as Heather said, right, a new member comes in and you can sense the excitement of the group, that they cannot wait to meet her. They cannot wait to introduce themselves to her. They can't wait to hear her introduction. Um, that the other is that, yes, I mean, I'm me including, right? Like I had a very intense institute the last month, and so I was not showing up as often. But I tell you, when I get on screen and the amount of excitement and, oh my God, Catherine, you're here, that where does that ever happen, right? On a daily basis, right? Like every single time I showed up this week, people are like, oh my God, Catherine, you're here, this is great. And I've done the same when Joan or Jano or even Heather has had to step away, that folks show up and you are ready to embrace them in a heartbeat. And then when folks sort of step away and you don't necessarily know why they have, the level of check-ins that we have done for each other, but just also the fact that we started doing, and we're like, we had met online for about a year and we're just like, you know what, we need so this was another seed.
Oh yeah.
um, Regina and I sort of ganged up on Heather and said, we need an in-person retreat. And she, again, yesed us. Like she did some yesing to us. And we were just like, Regina and I were sort of texting, and she is our heavenly North Star now. But, she's like, she's not picking it up. I said, yeah, I know, but we'll try again. So we did it roughly for about 6 months. And then Heather's like, okay, I hear you. So we did our first in-person retreat at BB's house, which is just outside of, about 90 minutes outside of Chicago.
Mhm.
And none of us had met online. And we made this joke because we had to then tell our significant others where we were going. So imagine how these conversations are going. Honey, I'm going to Chicago for a writing retreat. I've never been on one. Oh, great. Who are you going with? I said, oh, I'm going with Heather and Joan, and Regina will be there. How do you know them? Online. Have you, who's picking you up? Oh, Regina. And how do you know her? Online. And, he nodded and went, okay. And I flew to Chicago. Regina picked me up in her car. We were meeting Joan. Joan and I are texting on the phone, trying to find each other. Again, this is O'Hare Airport. We're in two different terminals. Bless Regina just kind of driving up and down. And I spot Joan sort of down, sort of with her little carry-on coming down. I jump out of the car and we like run into each other's arms. Everyone is watching because we are screaming and crying. That is the level of energy. And then we go to this retreat center, spent 3 days, added another day because we were just like, well, this is not long enough. And realized that gifting ourselves, like I had never been gifted myself a writing retreat. Mm-hmm. And to be able to be in a space where we would wake up and do morning pages, we would wake up and do spontaneous writing. I had never read any of my writing publicly. And the first retreat was the very first time that I read the first chapter of my memoir out loud publicly to these women. And so the kinds of courage that this group brings up on you in a way that what we often say, right, is this has existed in us for all time, but it's very often not cultivated or nurtured. And so to have it nurtured, where even, again, I normally don't go online. I just actually wrote a group of people, like I said to them, it's last minute, but here's the YouTube. But for how often do I go online and talk about my writing journey and talk about what it means to be a writer, and that, being a writer fuels the work that I do as an educator. Like, I am not separate people, right? And so I have been writing my whole life. I've written poetry when I was a kid as a way of managing my own childhood and teenage years. I then wrote as an academic, as an activist scholar for many, many years. And now I'm writing my memoir. And they're inferenced, right? They are not unrelated. And one of the things that Heather taught me is that, yes, there are different styles of writing. And one of the things that I think is so precious about this space is that we're able to sort of lean into and meet each other where we are. And so Heather met me in the fact of realizing that I'm an oral storyteller. In Hawaii, we say talk story, and we talk story all the time. And in fact, that's how I gathered the hush stories that are going to be in this book, was because I had 3 great grandmothers. They were alive they lived to about 95 to 102 through my teenage years. So their stories are in me, right? They're a part of my soul. They're a part of my heart. They're not on paper. They're now becoming on paper. But this idea of that they had existed, but Heather realized is that I am an oral storyteller first. Mm-hmm. And so one of the things that she did with me was she said, all right, we're going to I'm going to interview you and I'm going to record you. Because I had said to her, oh, I'm doing this with Peggy McIntosh, where she is asking me questions and I'm answering them with regard to my family. And Heather's like, well, then we're just going to continue that because you are an oral storyteller. And once you start to get it out and you actually see it in a transcription, then you can take, and again, me, right? I'm like, oh, easy then, easy peasy. It'll be in the transcription. I'll just copy that and that'll be my chapter, right? Like, and not that I'm looking for an easy out, but I was just like, oh, this is what writing a memoir is like. I can do this. And Heather just kind of like gave me this look like she just did. And she didn't say that wasn't the process. She just said, Catherine, let's just, get through the 3 stories. I'm going to send you the transcription. And then I started to write. Mm-hmm. And the transcription became the side piece. And what Heather also did was she took the formatting. So instead of just a plain white Word doc, she actually put it in a book size. And then she had me, basically, I started doing, the 2 screens, right? The transcription was here and because then more memories came back, right? And memories in the way that I wanted one story to flow into the other, and being the educator that I am, that I wanted to have a reflection piece at the end. I wanted to be able my memoir wanted to be a dynamic and engaging piece where I am calling you into the work. I'm not just saying, well, this happened to me and then this happened to me and this is the story that I heard, right? Like
Right.
I'm asking the reader as I'm telling the story, like, what have your experiences been? What
Mm,
hush stories are not being told to you? What did you uncover later in your life that you still have questions about? And what I realized is that I still had questions. And so I had the fortune of being able to go back to Hawaii over the last couple years for conferences. And each time I was able to sit with an elder and I
mm,
was able to ask questions that it never occurred to me to ask before. And it then inspired them to tell me stories that they had never told me before. And I would then come back, and the level of joy that this room, that the Jones, the Reginas, the Heathers, the Shaunas, the Janos would just sort of say to me after I said, you know, this is what happened the last time I was home. This was the story that I heard. And the level of encouragement and joy, and that again, this level of continuous celebration about your identity versus how many of us, particularly being in these positions of only, have been told to check a part of yourself at the door. You're too
mm,
loud, you're too resistant, right? Your writing is not academic enough.
mm.
You're being too soft on students. You know, why are you meeting with them, you know, later in the evening? Because they are working,
Schedules, right.
you know. And so
Mm,
to be able to be in a space where none of those questions are being asked of you, that is what keeps me in this space. But it also is what helps me want to protect this space for women of color. That,
mhm,
you know, I am all for that. All of us need have a story in us,
mhm,
and Heather is available to all of us.
mhm.
But that as women of color, we've had this conversation many times because we've thought about what would it look
Identity.
like to expand,
Mhm,
to be, we are multi-generational, but what if we were to be multi-gendered? And I think that, you know, what we realize is that, you know, how many times have we been spirit murdered, and the level of trauma that lives in our body that we don't talk about, the level of trauma that even if we don't talk about it takes a toll on our physical being.
mhm.
And to be able to be in this room, and we're, with Joan saying, like, we're able to take deep breaths, we're able to breathe, we're able to show up in the morning in our nightgown and bonnets, that there's no pretense. We don't have to have had breakfast, we don't have to have gotten ready and be, you know, we can basically get off in time to get ready for work, and, you know,
Mhm.
we can get to work on time. But to
For the
be
most
able,
part.
and for the most part, and in the evening that you can come home from work, that you can
Mhm.
have your kids in the background, that you can
Yes,
have your
yes.
dog walking behind you on the couch, or your cat, that you can be in a space that is just for you, where you can let down, where you can talk about what it feels like to be spirit murdered, where, you know, we have done job transitions with people, we've done
Mm.
career, not sorry, we have done life career transitions
Yes.
multiple times with each other
Oof.
in ways that I think would be very hard, sort of, if we were trying to watch what we say or watch ourselves.
Mhm.
um, and so I think that, you know, in terms of why this space has become, for me, it's an integral part of my day, it's an integral part of my life. And that even if I'm not, you know, even if I'm not there every morning, that I know somebody's going to text me from the, like, I hear from somebody from this group every single day, and sometimes multiple times a day, because those friendships have, those sisterships have
Mhm.
grown as a result of this sort of group that becomes co-conspirators. They become alliance builders, we become coalition builders, but more than anything, we become present to each other, wherever each other is.
Facts. And there's so much evidence for all of this, right? We showed up for Lacrissa for her book Shredding Rugs.
Exactly.
Even before the book, like we showed up on the launch party. We also showed up literally in person in Chicago when she was performing in The Color Purple at the Goodman, right? Showed up for Joan for her birthday. We
Yeah.
showed up for My goodness, on screen we have showed up for, like you said, career transitions, right?
Mm-hmm.
um we've done so much together that felt impossible before we met each other, right? And we stretch each other in the best way, and then we stretch you, and then we hold you, and then we watch you stretch even further, and then we
Yeah.
hold you, right? So there's been I need to take a moment and just kind of pause today and reflect on all that has happened in the past 4 years. Um, and really sit in that, because the list is a lot longer than I think it is, and would not have been possible if we weren't in the space to listen to each other, to respond to each other's needs, to understand that time does not exist the way that everyone else believes that it
Right.
exists. The way that we lose track of time is absolutely insane, and it feels amazing, and I could not have done this work without you. Being by my side on this journey have made all of this possible. You are one of the people who have held me through my transitions, through my hardships, um, who has, like I said, gently planted that seed over and patiently over and over and over again. And what you have talked about is just a snippet of what we have experienced in this group. And so when I talk about being able to invite people 10 slots, right?
Yeah.
Um, to invite folks into this space with us for $97 a month.
And if you divide that by 30 days, 30,
It's
31
like
days.
less than a cup of coffee.
Yeah.
It really is. It's less than a cup of coffee a day. And our nervous systems are being rewired.
Yep.
What we're writing on the page is being reframed, because it's not in the lens of systems that have not served us. And for you to be able to say, I'm in this group. Shauna, someone who showed up a year and a half ago, showed up and said, I'm going to write my book, and then a year later, on her anniversary, submitted her manuscript to us.
Manuscript.
We have
Exactly.
gone through editing and are about to move into interior design and book cover design,
So
and to be able to
excited.
hold that book in my hands, right?
Yep.
Catherine, you are right around the corner.
Yep.
To be able to hold your book in your hand, y'all gonna have to stop me from crying. I'm not gonna be able to get words out of my mouth. To be able to hold Joan's first draft of her manuscript in my
Manuscript.
hand, to have
Yeah.
3 manuscripts in my inbox from Teresa, who came to me and only
Yep.
showed up because I she wanted to support me.
Yep.
And then she started to show up more because of the community. And then the community began to reflect back to her what we see in her and how much value
Yep.
and brilliance and knowledge that she has. I have 3 manuscripts of hers in my
Yep.
inbox. And we are at towards the end of editing one of them and moving it. Like, it is absolutely beyond beautiful to watch this space grow. So for $97 a month is a no brainer to have access to a community outside of just the writing space, to
Yep.
be able to build long-term nurturing relationships with each other, to watch yourself grow. I'm telling you, family's gonna start coming for me, and it's gonna be perfectly fine, because they're gonna be like, but that ain't my mama, that's not my auntie, that's not my godmama, that's not my grandma. Like, people gonna be like, who you, Harpo? Who I've always meant to be, who I just didn't have the opportunity to grow into, right? I didn't have the opportunity to have the light shined. Yes, that's a word, shined on me,
Yeah.
right? Um, so to be in this space with us is absolutely transformative. When I say we transform on the page and in person, I mean it, right? And so for the next, I'm going to do math. It's a problem, which is why I have a countdown timer on the page, right? So for the next day, 11 hours and 16 minutes, you have access to this space. If you are a woman of color who has known in her body that there is something more, but just haven't experienced it yet, this is the space for you. Catherine, is there in is one last thing you want to leave?
Yeah, I was going to say, actually two things. One is that when you were saying about Lacrissa, right, is that I remember we were on screen and she announced that she was going to be starring in The Color Purple. And within 24 hours, we had booked our airline tickets. And she was in awe, right? She's like, "You're going to what?" And we're like, "We're coming and we're going to coordinate so that we can all go to the show together and support you." And so, of course, we were the loudest in the theater. We were obnoxiously loud, actually, in celebrating her. But the fact that I literally swear, like within 24 hours, all five of us that were traveling from out of state, again, the Chicago people sort of got their tickets, but the airline tickets that roughly about five or six of us that were flying in, we had booked within 24 hours. Then we also have an ambassador program where we also have said to Heather that you cannot show this is a collective. This work is meant to be done by you and other people. And so I'm proud to be one of the three ambassadors with Joan and Jano.
My goodness.
And so we were again on a same thing on a Zoom, trying to figure out how do we come together in person. Jano and Heather in Chicago, Joan and I are on the East Coast. Obviously, two people have to travel. And we were going round and round. And I was like, I think I have a space. So, and that's all I said. I was like, I think I have a space. And we've already figured out a time. And by the end of that phone call, we had basically made a decision that they were going to come to Boston.
Tickets were booked.
And um, and tickets were booked again within 24 hours. And
Mm.
bless my partner, I said, "Oh, we're having a few guests in a couple of weeks." Um, he's like, "Oh, just for the weekend?" I said, "Well, we're about 4 days." And he became our bed and breakfast chef. And we had agreed to for dinner, but he ended up chefing breakfast, lunch, and dinner for 4 days straight. So that we could, and he said, "I want to basically make sure your meals are cared for so that downstairs the four of you can focus on the work that you need to do to build up Bird's World. And you also," and he's very funny, he's like, "you also all need to write."
Mm.
And so again, this is the level of organicness that and planning that comes, that it allows us, how often do we walk in a world where spontaneity is not valued? And particularly spontaneity in a time where we're being told we don't matter, we're being told that we need to check ourselves, that to be able to do this level of spontaneity with joy. And one of the things, my closing comment is that this group has allowed me to rediscover my indigeneity.
Mm.
And that, we talk about the value of olu in Hawaiian, which is the value of well-being. And if you sort of separate out the letters, I often say that, if we're using olu, that olu means having a level of humility. And through all of this, the level of cultural humility that all of us exude with one another is incredibly valuable. The second is in Hawaiian, the value of lokahi, which is the value of harmony and community and coming together. And you cannot do collective movement building unless you actually have um, a community, a sense of belonging. And then the last, the A, stands for aloha. And what I've often said, right, is that so much about Hawaii gets culturally misappropriated. And that the word aloha, if you take it apart, that alo is presence and ha is breath. And so the word aloha means to be present and to, again, share in the breath of the person that you're with.
Mm-hmm.
And so, again, what this group has done for me is being able to let me um, be in those values, to live those values, to not compromise those values. And because of that, it has shown up now in every page of my writing. And
Mm.
for that, I'm incredibly grateful to you, Heather, and to everyone that has been a part of Bird's World. And I look forward to welcoming you, those of you. Please continue to follow Heather. And we look forward to the day where we can welcome you into the community.
My goodness. My goodness. Oh, Catherine, 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 thank you. Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you so much for being on this journey with me. with us and for sharing so much of yourself in all of the spaces that you occupy. That level of love, mm, my word, tears are forming. Um, if this touched you all in any way, if you have any questions whatsoever, no question is too big or too small, please reach out to me. Let me know. This is an amazing opportunity to start your journey, your healing journey, your writing journey, your movement building journey, and most
Yes,
importantly, your liberation journey. All right.
correct.
So I want to
Absolutely.
let you know that I see you all. You are not alone in this group. Not
Ever.
even a little bit. Ever, ever, ever. I want to send all of my love and all of the liberation your way. And I want to encourage you to keep reading, keep writing, and as always, keep flying, y'all.
So hui ho until we meet again.